The storm had already swallowed
my
the valley when the
God.
cowboy spotted something dark beneath the snowdrift. At first, he thought it was a fallen log. Then it moved. Out here, in the Wild West backcountry, winter doesn't forgive mistakes. One wrong turn, one missed shelter, and even the strongest don't make it through the night. But buried nearly chest-deep in ice was a horse barely breathing and very pregnant. The cowboy was poor. Worn boots, empty saddlebags, no warm barn waiting back home. Logic told him to keep riding. Survival demanded it. But something about the mare's eyes stopped him cold. What he discovered next didn't just change the fate of that horse, it rippled through the entire town. A birth no one expected, a secret hidden in the snow, and a quiet cowboy who would soon be spoken about in whispers of awe. Have you ever wondered how one small act, done in silence, can echo louder than a gunshot across the West? This is one of those stories. If stories like this move you the kind rooted in grit, horses, and real Western heart, go ahead and support Horses Stories. West Legends by tapping like, subscribing, and sharing this story with someone who still believes kindness matters. It truly helps keep these legends alive. Winter in the high plains doesn't announce itself politely. It arrives like a debt collector early, ruthless, and uninterested in excuses. By the time the sky turned the color of old iron, most folks had already pulled their doors shut, stacked their firewood, and counted themselves lucky to be indoors. But out beyond the town's last fence line, a lone cowboy was still riding. His name didn't matter much to anyone back then. He was just another working hand scraping by-patched coat, tired horse, pockets light enough to rattle in the wind. The kind of man towns forget because he never stays long enough to leave a mark. That day, he was cutting across a frozen stretch of land most folks avoided when the snow set in. It was a shortcut. Sure, but shortcuts in winter have a habit of turning long. The wind picked up first, sharp, bitter. It slid under his collar and found every weakness in his clothes. His horse lowered its head and pushed forward, breath steaming, hooves crunching through crusted snow. A cowboy leaned into the saddle, eyes narrowed, calculating distance the way men like him always did. Shelter was still miles away. Turning back meant losing daylight. Going forward meant trusting the weather wouldn't turn meaner than it already was. That's when he saw it. Something dark interrupted the endless white shape that didn't belong. Half buried near a shallow ravine, barely visible beneath drifting snow. At first glance, it looked like debris. Maybe a dead tree limb dragged down by the storm. He almost rode past it. Almost. Then the shape shifted. His horse stopped on instinct, ears flicking forward. The cowboy frowned, squinting through the swirling snow. Out here, movement meant only a handful of things. None of them good. He slid down from the saddle, boots sinking deep, the cold biting through the soles. Each step felt heavier than the last as he approached. It was a horse, a mare, lying on her side, ribs faintly visible beneath ice-dusted hide. Snow had packed around her body so tightly it looked like the land itself was trying to swallow her. Her chest rose and fell, slow and shallow, like each breath was a decision she wasn't sure she wanted to make. The cowboy swore under his breath, not out of anger, but disbelief. Horses didn't just lie down in snowstorms, not unless something was terribly wrong. He knelt, brushing snow from her neck, then froze. She was pregnant. Even with numb fingers and fading light, he could see it clearly now, the heavy belly, the strain in her breathing. Her eye rolled toward him, dark and glassy, but alive. And in that look was something he'd seen before on battlefields and cattle drives alike. Quiet panic mixed with exhaustion. Here's the thing about men who grow up around horses. They learn early that animals don't ask for help unless they have no other choice. The wind howled louder, as if reminding him where he stood. His mind raced through the hard facts. He had no wagon, no rope team, no nearby barn. He was barely making ends meet as it was. Even if he somehow got the mare to shelter, keeping her alive, let alone helping her deliver a foal, would cost time, money, and energy he didn't have. And yet, leaving her felt worse. He pressed a gloved hand against her flank. She was ice cold. Too cold. The kind of cold that settles in when the body's already losing its fight. He stood there longer than he should have, snow gathering on his shoulders, wrestling with a decision no one would ever know about if he chose the easier path. This is where legends usually lie to you. They pretend choices like this are simple. They aren't. Finally, he moved.
Years later, people would argue about the exact moment the legend truly began. Some said it started the night of the storm, when a poor cowboy chose to stop instead of riding on. Others swore it began the first time the foal outran a seasoned horse without seeming to try. But the cowboy himself, if you ever asked him, would just shake his head and say legends were things other people talked about when they didn't understand what they were seeing. By the time the foal reached its third year, it had outgrown the word foal entirely. It stood tall now, broad-chested, lean in the right places. Those markings, once just a curiosity, had stretched and sharpened with its frame, giving it a look that turned heads without asking for attention. It moved differently too, not flashy, efficient, as if every step had purpose. The mare watched from the fence line whenever the cowboy worked with it, calm and steady, eyes soft. She had fully recovered, stronger even than before. Some said surviving death had given her second life. Others believed she'd simply remembered who she was. Training began the way the cowboy did everything. Slow, patient, quiet. No harsh bits. No brute force. Just time, consistency, and respect. He talked to the horse the way he had the night of the storm, low and steady. He let trust grow before asking for effort. The horse learned fast. Too fast. He remembered commands after hearing them once. Adjusted to terrain instinctively. Crossed rivers without hesitation. Climbed rocky ground like it had been born there, which in a way it had. Word traveled again. Ranchers noticed. Drovers talked. A traveling horse trader came through the valley one summer and left without making an offer, because even he could tell this was not an animal that belonged on a ledger. The first real test came during a cattle drive gone wrong. A sudden storm. Nothing like that first one, but dangerous enough, spooked part of the herd. Cattle scattered into broken ground where horses often stumbled or refused to go. The cowboy didn't hesitate. He swung into the saddle, and the horse responded like it had been waiting for the moment. They moved as one. Where other horses slowed, this one surged forward. Where footing turned treacherous, it adjusted without being asked. The cowboy barely touched the reins. He didn't need to. By nightfall, the herd was recovered. Men who'd watched it happen stood quiet afterward. One finally said, "I've never seen a horse do that." The cowboy just nodded. "Me neither." After that, the visits changed. No more buyers. No more whispered numbers. Instead, people came with problems. Difficult terrain. Lost cattle. Routes others refused to ride. They asked if he'd help. Not because he had a rare horse, but because he had a reliable one. And he did. Not for glory. Not for money. But because work was honest and the land remembered those who treated it that way. The horse aged into its strength. Muscle layered on a bone. Endurance became legend. Story spread, quietly at first, of a horse that could travel farther on less, that never panicked, that would stop and turn back if its rider fell. Some swore it once dragged an injured man 3 miles to safety. The cowboy never corrected them. Then came the day the mare died. It was peaceful, natural. She lay in the grass, head resting against the fence she'd leaned on so many evenings. The horse stood beside her, still watchful. The cowboy buried her on the rise, overlooking the valley, marking the spot with a simple stone. That night, the horse stayed close to the house, restless but quiet. Loss changes animals. It changes people too. The bond between the cowboy and the horse deepened after that. Less spoken, more understood. They had both come from nothing. Both survived when odds said they shouldn't. Years later, a young rider approached the valley. He'd heard the stories. All of them. Most he didn't believe. He just wanted to see the horse. The cowboy led him. The rider watched the horse move, watched the way it responded without command. Finally, he asked the question everyone eventually asked. "What's it worth?" The cowboy smiled. "More than you can afford," he said gently. "And less than you think." The rider didn't argue, because by then it was obvious. This wasn't a horse born to be sold. It was born to be remembered. Long after the cowboy passed, quietly, as he'd lived, the valley kept its name. Travelers still pointed to the hills and spoke of the horse that came from the snow. Children heard the story and grew quiet at the part where the storm howled and a man chose kindness over comfort. And somewhere in the retelling, the truth stayed intact. A poor cowboy, a pregnant mare buried in snow, a choice made without witnesses. That choice gave the West one of its quiet legends. Not written in books, not shouted from stages, but carried, hoofbeat by hoofbeat, across the land. The trouble with secrets is they don't stay quiet for long, especially not in the West. By the second sunrise after the cowboy left town, folks were already talking beyond the borders. A trader mentioned it at a way station. A male rider carried it east with the post. A ranch hand swore he'd seen a Blackridge foal with his own eyes and told anyone who'd listen. By the time the story reached the neighboring valleys, it had grown legs of its own. A pregnant mare pulled from the snow. A foal born in a blizzard. Blackridge blood alive. Each retelling sharpened the edges. Details changed. Stakes rose. And the cowboy, who'd wanted nothing more than to disappear back into the quiet, found the world slowly turning its head in his direction. He felt it first in the land. The trails weren't as empty anymore. Hoofprints lingered where none should be. Smoke curled from distant camps he didn't recognize. Once, while watering the mare at a creek, he spotted a rider on a ridge who watched too long before turning away. He kept moving. The mare grew stronger with every mile. Her coat regained its shine. Her steps lengthened, confident again. The foal, now more sure-footed than awkward, stayed close, matching pace, eyes alert. Those markings seemed bolder now, catching the light, drawing attention whether anyone meant to give it or not. The cowboy learned to travel early and late, resting during the middle hours. He avoided towns, skirted known routes. Old habits from harder times returned easily. Out here, awareness kept you alive. Still, rumors moved faster than horses. In one settlement, a man approached him with a smile too smooth to trust. "Fine-looking pair you've got there," he said casually, eyes flicking to the foal. "Word is you're sitting on something special." The cowboy didn't slow. "Just horses." The man chuckled. "That's one way to describe a fortune." Another town, another offer. Bigger this time. Enough to set a man up for life. The cowboy didn't even let the man finish his sentence. What surprised people most wasn't his refusal. It was how calm he was about it. As if money had never been part of the equation. As if the choice had been made long before anyone else showed up. But not everyone asked politely. One evening, camped near a stand of cottonwoods, he heard movement in the dark. Not animals. Too deliberate. He rolled quietly, hand on his knife, heart steady. Two figures crept closer. He stood suddenly, firelight catching his face. "Turn around," he said. They froze. One muttered something about just wanting to look. The other's gaze stayed locked on the foal. "You've been warned," the cowboy continued, voice flat. "Leave. Now." They left. Word spread after that. Not just about the horse, but about the man. About the way he handled himself. About how getting close without permission was a mistake. That earned him a different kind of respect. Meanwhile, the story reached people who remembered Blackridge not as rumor, but as history. An elderly rancher sent a letter ahead of him, care of a general store. It caught up 3 days later. "If that foal carries the blood, I think it does," the letter read. "You're holding the last living thread of something rare. Protect it. Not everyone will want it for the right reasons." The cowboy folded the letter and tucked it away. He didn't need convincing. Weeks passed. Spring edged closer. Snow softened. Grass began to show. The mare thrived. The foal grew fast, too fast. Strong legs, bright eyes, a mind that learned quickly. It watched everything, remembered paths, came when called without training. Blackridge traits. The cowboy finally gave the foal a name, something simple, something earned, not flashy. Names mattered. He wanted one that fit quietly, the way the foal itself seemed to carry strength without advertising it. And then, one afternoon, he rode into a valley he hadn't planned on entering. It was wide, sheltered, ringed by hills that broke the wind. Fresh water ran through the center, grass thick enough to feed a small herd, the kind of place men spent lifetimes searching for. He stopped, looked around. The mare lowered her head to graze. The foal followed, content. For the first time since the storm, the cowboy felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Possibility. He stayed, built a rough shelter, patched fencing, worked the land the way he knew how. Days filled with honest labor. Nights quiet enough to hear the foal breathe. Word still traveled, but slower now. Distance had a way of thinning out trouble. People still came. Some curious, some hopeful, some calculating. But they were met with the same answer every time. No. Eventually, most stopped asking. Because the story had changed again. It wasn't just about a rare horse anymore. It was about a man who wouldn't sell. About a foal that grew stronger by the day. About a mare who'd survived death itself. And stories like that, real ones, don't fade. They settle into the land. They wait. The cowboy didn't know it yet, but what he was building wasn't just a quiet life. It was a legacy. And the final chapter of this story, how that foal would reshape everything people thought they knew, was still ahead. By the time they reached the edge of town, word had already outrun them. That's how places like this worked. A man disappears in a storm, then reappears leading a mare and a newborn foal through snowdrifts. And suddenly, every doorway has someone standing in it. Folks paused mid-shore. Conversations died halfway through a sentence. Even the blacksmith stepped out, hammer still in hand. You could feel in the air something had shifted. The cowboy walked quietly, letting the mare set the pace. She was weak but steady, head low, foal tucked close to her side, mirroring every step. The foal's legs still wobbled, but there was fire in the way it moved now. Purpose, curiosity, life. And those markings, under proper light, they were impossible to ignore. Dark, clean lines along the foal's shoulders and flanks, almost painted on. Not flashy, not decorative, intentional. Anyone who knew horses, really knew them, felt a tug of recognition they couldn't quite place. Someone finally said it out loud. Looks an awful lot like a Blackridge foal. The word rippled through the crowd like a dropped plate. Blackridge. People exchanged looks. Some skeptical, some uneasy, a few quietly excited. That name hadn't been spoken openly in years. Not since the old breeding ranch burned down and its owner vanished under circumstances no one liked to remember too clearly. Can't be, someone muttered. That line's gone. That's what they said, another replied. But look at it. The cowboy said nothing. He just kept walking. They settled the mare into the only heated barn available, clearing a stall in a hurry. Fresh straw, warm water. Hands moved fast, careful, respectful. The mare lowered her head gratefully, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. The foal stood close, blinking at the unfamiliar shadows and sounds. Steam rose from both of them now, warmth replacing the bite of the plains. That's when the questions really started. Where did you find her? How long was she down? How'd you get her through the night? The cowboy answered what mattered and ignored the rest. He was tired in a way that settled into the bones. Talking felt heavier than lifting fence posts. But when someone asked about the foal's markings, he paused. I just found her, he said simply. Didn't know what she was. An older man stepped forward then, quiet, deliberate. He'd spent decades buying, selling, and breeding horses. If there was a bloodline worth knowing, he knew it. He crouched slowly, studying the foal with a practiced eye. Checked the legs, the shoulders, the shape of the head. His fingers traced one of the markings, careful not to spook the foal. His jaw tightened. This isn't coincidence, he said finally. That mare came from Blackridge stock. Silence followed. Blackridge horses weren't just rare, they were legendary. Known for endurance, intelligence, an almost stubborn loyalty once bonded. Ranchers used to say a Blackridge horse could carry you farther on half the feed and still turn back for you if you fell. They were also expensive. In their prime, a single foal could buy a ranch outright. But they disappeared after the fire. Records lost. Herds scattered. Some said stolen. Others said wiped out. Most folks eventually accepted they were gone for good. Apparently, they were wrong. The mare shifted in her stall, ears flicking as if she sensed the weight of attention. The foal pressed closer to her side, then looked up, straight at the cowboy. Held his gaze. Something about that look unsettled him. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. The older man stood. "If this gets out," he said carefully, "people will come asking questions. Some friendly, some not." The cowboy nodded once. He'd already guessed as much. Sure enough, within hours, riders arrived from neighboring spreads. Then buyers. Then men who spoke softly but watched everything. Offers were made. Numbers whispered. Promises hinted at. "You could sell the foal alone and never work another winter," one man said. Another leaned in closer. "Mare too. Blackridge broodmares are worth more than gold." The cowboy listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Then he shook his head. "She's not for sale," he said. That answer landed heavier than any refusal of money ever had. Confusion spread across faces. Disbelief. Some irritation. "You don't understand what you're turning down." He met their eyes calmly. Understand exactly. He'd found her buried in snow, ready to die. He'd stayed when he didn't have to. He'd watched life fight its way into the world with no guarantee of reward. That kind of bond didn't come with a price tag. But not everyone respected that. That night, someone tried to open the barn. The latch scraped softly, almost quietly enough to go unnoticed. Almost. The cowboy was awake instantly. He'd slept in hay, boots on, instinct still humming. He rose without a sound and reached the door just as a shadow shifted outside. "Barn's closed," he said. The shadow froze. A pause. Then footsteps retreated into the dark. By morning, the town buzzed with rumors. Some said buyers would return with contracts. Others said men from far-off breeding syndicates were already on their way. The foal had become more than an animal. It was an opportunity, a prize, and prizes attract trouble. The cowboy made his decision before breakfast. He packed quietly, checked the mare's strength, watched the foal move, steadier now, faster, already showing signs of the power hidden in those small limbs. Before noon, he led them out. No announcement, no farewell speeches, just a nod to the stable hand and a simple thank you. Someone asked where he was headed. He shrugged. Someplace quiet. As they left town, a few folks watched from porches. Some waved. Some didn't. Everyone understood one thing clearly now. What had been pulled from the snow wasn't just a miracle of survival. It was a secret the world wanted, and the cowboy intended to keep it that way. For now. At that moment, he didn't know this tiny detail would soon mean everything. Not just for him, but for a town that believed it had seen every kind of horse there was. The storm raged on. The mare breathed. The foal shivered closer to her side. And the cowboy stayed. Because some nights don't allow you to walk away. Morning didn't arrive gently. It crept in slow and gray, as if the sun itself was unsure whether this frozen stretch of land deserved another day. The storm had eased, but the cold stayed behind, thick, heavy, and unmerciful. The world lay silent under a fresh blanket of snow, every sound muted, every edge softened. The cowboy hadn't slept. He couldn't remember the last time he'd stayed awake this long, not even on the longest cattle drives. His body felt hollowed out, like the cold had scraped him clean from the inside. Still, he moved the moment he saw the faintest hint of light. The mare was breathing. That alone felt like a victory. Her sides rose and fell more steadily now, though each breath still looked like work. He knelt beside her, checking her legs, rubbing warmth back into stiff muscle. Frost clung to her coat, sparkling faintly as dawn strengthened. Then there was the foal, curled tight against its mother's belly, legs folded awkwardly beneath a body that still didn't quite understand itself. Its coat had dried overnight, revealing those markings more clearly now, bold, unusual streaks that stood out against the pale snow. the kind of markings that made horsemen pause. The foal lifted its head, wobbly, uncertain, but determined. The cowboy felt a smile tug at his mouth despite himself. "That's it," he murmured. "Up you go." The foal tried to stand. Failed. Tried again. Failed harder. Each attempt ended in a soft collapse, tiny hooves scrabbling for purchase. The mare shifted slightly, letting out a low sound, not distress but encouragement. Horses speak fluently without words. Minutes passed like this. Try. Fall. Rest. Try again. Finally, on the fourth attempt, the foal stood. Barely. Its legs trembled like saplings in the wind, knees locked, body swaying dangerously. The cowboy held his breath, afraid even that might be too much pressure on the moment. Then instinct kicked in. The foal nosed along the mare's side, searching, missing, searching again, and then finding it. When it latched on and began to nurse, the cowboy closed his eyes. That was the moment he knew they might actually make it. Colostrum, the first milk, was everything. Strength, immunity, life itself. Without it, a foal's chances dropped sharply. Watching that tiny jaw work, seeing the mare respond, adjusting herself despite exhaustion, felt like witnessing something sacred. But relief didn't mean safety. The mare still couldn't stand, and that was a problem that couldn't be ignored. A horse down too long risks more than cold. Internal damage, circulatory failure, muscle breakdown. The cowboy knew the signs. He'd lost animals before. He wasn't about to sugarcoat the odds. He coaxed her gently, talking low, applying pressure the way he'd been taught. She tried. Muscles tensed. Legs twitched. Nothing. She sank back, breath coming faster now. He swore softly and adjusted his approach. Instead of pushing, he waited. Let her rest. Let strength gather. Sometimes, forcing it only made things worse. The foal finished nursing and wobbled closer to her head, nosing her muzzle. That small gesture seemed to wake something in the mare. Her ears flicked. Her eyes sharpened. She tried again. This time, her front legs came under her body. The cowboy moved instantly, supporting her shoulder, bracing himself against the snow. His boots slipped, his muscles screamed, but he held fast. With a groan that sounded almost human, the mare rose to her knees. She stayed there, trembling violently. "Easy," he whispered. "You're doing it." The foal stepped back instinctively, watching wide-eyed. One wrong move now could send her crashing down again. Then, slowly, she pushed up. Hind legs found the ground. Hooves dug in. Snow sprayed as she fought for balance. And then she stood. Just like that. The cowboy staggered back, laughing under his breath fogging the air. He leaned on his knees, letting the moment sink in. Horses weren't supposed to survive nights like that. Not without help. Not without shelter. Yet here they were, alive. The mare took a few uncertain steps, then lowered her head to nuzzle her foal. The foal answered with a soft whinny, thin but confident. The sound echoed across the quiet plain. That's when the cowboy heard something else. Voices, distant, faint, carried on the cold air. He straightened, heart jumping. He hadn't expected anyone this far out, not in weather like this. He scanned the horizon, eyes squinting. Two figures appeared over a low rise. Then a third. Townsfolk by the look of them. Men bundled against the cold, leading pack horses. Searchers. Someone must have realized he hadn't made it back before the storm. Word traveled fast in small towns when winter set in. Lose one man to the cold, and everyone felt it. The figures drew closer, surprise clear even from a distance. One of them stopped short when he saw the mare and foal standing there in the open, alive against all reason. By the time they reached him, questions poured out. "Good Lord, where'd you find her? Is that foal new? How are they even standing?" The cowboy answered simply. He always did. He pointed to the ravine, shrugged, didn't feel right leaving her. They shook their heads, disbelief written across their faces. One man crouched to examine the foal more closely, and then froze. "Hey," he said slowly, "you see these markings?" The others leaned in. Recognition flickered. Not certainty, but suspicion. Because those markings, they weren't random. They belonged to a line of horses most folks believed had vanished years ago. The cowboy noticed the way their expressions changed, the way curiosity turned into something heavier. Interest. He didn't know it yet, but from that moment on, the story was no longer just about survival. It was about discovery, and the town was about to learn that some legends aren't found in gold or guns, but in the snow, breathing quietly, waiting to be noticed. He cleared snow from her face first, then her legs, working fast, breath ragged. He talked to her, not loudly, just enough for her to hear him through the wind. It wasn't anything poetic, just reassurance. Promises he wasn't sure he could keep. When he tried to get her up, she failed. Twice. Her legs shook violently, then gave out. The third attempt nearly finished her. She collapsed, sides heaving, a low sound escaping her throat that stopped him cold. That sound meant pain. It also meant urgency. He scanned the land. No help, no lights, just white and gray stretching forever. The storm thickened, snow coming down harder now, erasing his tracks almost as soon as he made them. He had a choice to make, and winter wasn't waiting. Using his own horse as a windbreak, he managed to pack snow around the mare's body, not to bury her, but to insulate her. It was an old trick, one passed down by men who survived winters by learning to work with the cold instead of fighting it. He rubbed her legs until his arms burned, trying to bring life back into them. And something happened that made his stomach drop. The mare shifted suddenly, her breathing changing. Shorter, faster. She strained, muscles tightening beneath his hands. He'd seen enough births to recognize the signs. She wasn't just pregnant. She was going into labor, right there, in the open, in the middle of a snowstorm. He let out a slow breath and laughed once, soft, humorless. Of all the places, of all the times. He checked the sky, then looked back at the mare. Well, he muttered, guess neither of us planned this. Night crept in fast. The cold sharpened. Somewhere far off, a coyote cried, its call swallowed by the wind. The cowboy pulled his coat tighter, settled in beside the mare, and prepared himself for a fight he hadn't woken up expecting. He didn't know it yet, but by sunrise, this frozen stretch of land would become the birthplace of story the town would talk about for years. And this was only the beginning. The night didn't just arrive, it closed in. By the time the last smear of daylight vanished behind the hills, the temperature had dropped so fast it felt personal, like the land itself had decided this was the moment to test who deserved to stay alive. Snow fell thicker now, quieter somehow, smothering sound and shrinking the world down to a small circle of darkness around the cowboy and the mare. He checked her breathing again. Still shallow, still uneven. Steam puffed weakly from her nostrils, barely visible in the dark. He pressed his ear near her ribs, listening past the wind. The heartbeat was there, but it was tired. Horses aren't built for lying down long in the cold. Every rancher knows that. Circulation slows. Muscles stiffen. Panic sets in. And panic burns energy the body can't afford to lose. This mare had already been fighting too long. The cowboy ran through his knowledge, piece by piece. No veterinary tools. No clean stall. No warm water. Just his hands, his instincts, and whatever stubborn mercy had kept her alive this far. Her sides tightened again. A shudder rolled through her body. Another contraction. He swallowed hard. You picked a hell of a night, he murmured, though whether he meant the storm or the unborn foal, he couldn't say. He shifted closer, positioning himself behind her, careful not to startle her. Snow soaked through his knees, then his jeans, then stopped mattering altogether. He'd reached that place where discomfort turns numb, and the only thing that exists is the task in front of you. The mare's head lifted slightly, then fell back. I met his again. Have you ever seen an animal look at you like it knows you're the last option? That look does something to a person. He rubbed her neck, slow and steady, grounding her. Horses read energy better than people. If he panicked, she would too. So he spoke calmly, voice low, even as his heart thudded hard against his ribs. Labor in horses can move fast or drag on until it becomes deadly. Out here, without help, either could be a disaster. Minutes passed, or hours. time warped the way it does when survival takes over. The wind eased for a moment, then returned with a vengeance, whipping snow across their faces. He adjusted the snow walls he'd built, reinforcing them, blocking as much wind as possible. Then he saw it, a dark shape beneath the mare's tail. At first, he thought it was shadow. Then it moved. The foal was coming. Relief surged through him, quickly followed by fear. A clean delivery was still a gamble. A breech birth, a stuck shoulder, a weak foal. Any one of those could turn this rescue into a tragedy. The mare strained hard now, her body tensing with effort. She cried out, a sound no horse should ever have to make. The cowboy braced himself, guiding gently when he could, backing off when she needed space. Easy now, he whispered. You're doing fine. Just keep going. The foal's legs emerged first. Good sign. Then the nose. He exhaled for the first time in what felt like forever. One final push, and the foal slid free, landing softly in the snow with a wet, fragile sound that cut through the storm. For a heartbeat, everything went still. No movement, no sound. The cowboy's chest tightened. He leaned forward, brushing snow from the tiny body, rubbing briskly to stimulate breathing. The foal twitched once. Then again, a weak gasp. Then another. Alive. The mare collapsed back, sides heaving, exhausted beyond words. He worked quickly, clearing the foal's nostrils, encouraging circulation, shielding the tiny body from the wind. The foal shivered violently, legs trembling, instinct fighting its way to the surface. But something was wrong. The mare wasn't moving, not the way she should. Her breathing had grown labored, almost ragged. Foam edged her mouth. She tried to lift her head and failed. Her body was shutting down. Giving birth had taken what little strength she had left. The cowboy's mind raced. He couldn't lose her now, not after this. He pressed his coat against her side, adding warmth, rubbing her chest and legs again, refusing to accept what the signs were telling him. Stay with me, he said, louder now. You hear me? You don't get to quit. The foal bleated softly, a thin, fragile sound, but strong enough to carry meaning. The mare's ear flicked. Just once. That tiny movement felt like a miracle. He focused on keeping them both warm, alternating between mare and foal, his body aching, fingers burning as sensation crept back in painful waves. He knew the next few hours were critical. If the mare didn't recover enough to stand, she wouldn't survive the night. If the foal couldn't nurse soon, it would weaken fast. And dawn was still far away. He adjusted his position, blocking the wind again, huddling close like a living wall. Snow piled against his back, his hat stiff with ice. Somewhere in the distance, another coyote called, closer this time. Predators could sense vulnerability. Always had. The cowboy reached for the small knife at his belt, not in fear but readiness. Out here, survival demanded awareness of every possibility, no matter how ugly. He glanced down at the foal again, and that's when he noticed something that made him pause. The markings. Even beneath snow and afterbirth, the foal's coat carried unusual patterns, distinctive, almost deliberate. Not something you saw every day, not something you forgot. He frowned, curiosity flickering despite the exhaustion. What are you? He murmured.